Hello, this is Mayor Chris Bollwage, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Our City. Residents can visit our social media sites to get more information or simply call our public information office at 908-820-4124 for any upcoming events that are happening in our city. And for tonight's show, I am pleased to be joined by Miss Adriana Rivera, who, we're going to talk about it anyway, I'll get into that, who I've known for many, many years. A young lady whose mom used to work here, but she wrote a book. And welcome to the show, Adriana. I'm not going to talk about you. You talk about me. You. Tell me about yourself.
Oh, great. So I'm happy to be here. I'm an author. I lived in Elizabeth till I was 10 years old. It was a place in my heart, really close place in my heart, being in Elizabeth. And it's nice to be back home. I'm an author and songwriter and playwright, and I've done a lot of different writing over the years. So.
You grew up on Bailey Avenue, right?
I did. Yeah. Bailey Avenue is home, yeah. That's my home.
And I listened to your podcast, and your new book is called Palomas Song for Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Now, are you of Puerto Rican descent?
I am.
Okay.
Author of Puerto Rican descent,
Both mom and dad?
Both of them, 100%.
Tell me about the book.
So, Palomas Song for Puerto Rico is a collaboration with the Smithsonian Institution, and it is about a young 12-year-old girl named Paloma who lives in Puerto Rico in a finca, like a plantation, in Ponce, Puerto Rico, and this is at the time of the Spanish-American War. So, lots of exciting things are happening, a lot of scary things are happening, and a lot of change in Puerto Rico at the time. It leads into the U.S. invasion of Puerto Rico, the island, and how Puerto Rico became a colony, and then subsequently a territory.
Have you ever been to Puerto Rico? Did you visit?
Yes, I visited quite often.
Did you visit this area?
I haven't visited Ponce specifically, but I've visited a lot of areas of the island, and I've been to places near Ponce, so that's
Mom and Dad, where are they from?
Caguas and Aguadilla, so different parts of the island, yeah.
Okay. So what inspired you, first of all, to write a book? You didn't wake up one morning, right, and you said, hey, I'm going to write a book, so it had to be a process there.
Oh, yes. So, this book is specifically a different project, but I've always been a writer. Actually, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I would go to the library in Elizabeth all the time in Elmora.
I read something you wrote very early that your mom sent me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I wrote kind of a picture book of sorts.
That might have been what I read.
It might have been, right. But I drew kind of some pictures and created this story for myself, and brought it to the library, and I said, "Hi, I wrote a book. Could you put it on?"
Did you really do that?
Yeah, I did. I went to the librarians in the children's section. I was like, "Could you put this on the shelf? I wrote a book," and they were so sweet and so lovely, and they put it on the shelf next to the picture books, and I was a real author at that point. It was great. Really proud moment, yeah.
That's terrific. You don't have pictures of that event.
That
would have been special,
That
right?
would have been great. My mom should have taken pictures of that.
I know, because she probably brought you there, right?
She did.
So your mom was the business administrator here when I first became the mayor.
Yes.
And we worked together for a couple of years, and that's how I met you as a very young girl. And now you took this book and are collaborating with the Smithsonian. How did that come about, Adriana?
Yeah, so Smithsonian is creating this series. It's called the Nuestras Voces series of books. It's a diary series. So every book is a diary of that time. There's books about the Mexican-American War. There's books about the World War II, Taínos back in really long time ago, the indigenous culture in the Caribbean, and there's this book about Palomas Song in Puerto Rico during the Spanish-American War, and this book is specifically, as part of the series, the second book in the series that's coming out, and it's such a proud moment for me working with the Smithsonian. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal to work with them, and they were great about really making sure, kind of double checking my work. I did a lot of research for the book, but
so did they double check your work on historical?
Yes.
Okay.
On the historical elements, because it is a historical fiction novel, so you want to make sure those details are really accurate. And they were great about really making sure everything was really historically accurate and making sure it was really sound for the story itself. So.
And did you have to go? You went to D.C. or this is all?
I did not. It was through email.
Through
email, yeah.
So, was there anything historic that you may have learned that surprised you about this?
Yeah. So, Specifically, I think what surprised me was learning about the more recent history, that like what happened after the invasion, kind of what the reaction was and what
When
happened
did the invasion
after.
occur?
In 1898.
1898.
July 25th.
So that was part of the
1898.
Spanish
American War.
American War.
Yeah, so that was a whole learning process, and it's actually been 150 years, I believe, since this had happened. So, if I'm doing the math right.
No, that's all right.
But yeah, it's been a long time.
125 years.
125
right.
years.
It's
Yeah,
close
that's
enough.
close
Yeah,
enough.
it's close enough.
It's close enough. But it's been a long time since this happened, but it's still very relevant in this time today because there's a lot of conversation about Puerto Rico in Congress and Senate.
Whether it should be a state, whether it should not be a state.
Exactly.
The
And
Puerto Rican plebiscite, whether they're going to vote for it, not vote for it. They've had many of those plebiscites through the years.
Exactly. So it's been a big process, and it was divided then with this particular story, and it's divided now. So
I had the good fortune of listening to your podcast too, by the way.
Oh.
And I enjoyed it. It was 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And you enunciated exactly where you were going with this book.
Mm-hmm.
And so based on that, what were some of the challenges that you saw in writing Paloma's Song?
Well, I really wanted to make sure that it was a positive story, because this story could go very dark very quickly.
I sensed that when I read it. I sensed the darkness of the story, and I was, I don't know, I guess a little surprised. I was always like, I was like upbeat kids books, but you're right, it could go, it didn't at the end, but it could.
I wanted to have some hopefulness and some positivity, and I feel like it's really important for Latinos and Latinx kids and to really see themselves as the stars of their own story and see a positivity in their lives and a good model of like, wow, there's hope for us, you know? And I think it's really important for kids to see themselves. The representation is so important. So I really like that the stories of this series were really important to that.
So Adriana, you actually wrote the song Paloma plays with her father in the book. So you talked about being an author when we opened up the show.
Yes.
Do you prefer writing songs? Do you prefer writing novels? Do you like them both?
I think I prefer writing novels, but I am a songwriter, so I've written songs, and it was just a really fun experience. I was writing the book, and I was like, you know, what is this song Paloma's actually writing? So I wrote this song called "Hear My Island Sing," and it's just a really sweet little ditty, I guess. And it's a sing-song kind of thing, and it's just really nice that I had a song that
like
in
a
mind.
jingle type of thing.
Kind of, yeah. It's a very simple song for a child, you know, and it's just very sweet and really reflects the war and the music of the island and what she hears every day in the nature of the island, birds and cookie and all that.
So we've talked a lot about this book and what you got out of it as a writer and what I got out of it as a reader. What do you hope kids to get out of this
I hope that they really do see themselves in this. And
That's a challenge, right?
It's a challenge, but I really hope they see themselves in it and potentially want to learn more about their heritage and want to learn more about where they come from, where their family comes from, no matter where that origin may be, but really understanding and learning about their history.
I don't think kids or anybody spends enough time doing that because I think it's important. I mean, it's nice to know what your heritage is.
Yeah.
When was the moment in your life that you were awakened to saying, hey, I want to know more about my heritage?
You know,
Were you young? Were you in high school?
I think I was always interested in it, but I think when I became an adult and, Hurricane Maria really opened up a lot of questions for me, and it was a really serious time and still serious on the island even today, but I think it really opened up a lot of doors and opened my eyes to see, well, where do we really come from? What is our real history here? And it was only 6 years ago, but it was just really important that I learn more.
So you started off when you were 4 or 5 writing when you went to the library. Do you see yourself in the rest of your career continuing to write? Yeah,
I do. Actually, I have a couple other projects in the works, which is very exciting. I have a couple more novels in the works, so we'll keep our eyes out for those.
When you say a couple of more, it's not easy to write one book, and you have a couple of more. I mean, so when was the moment you said, I'm going to pursue writing?
Oh, wow.
It couldn't have been when you were 4 or 5.
It was not when I was 4 or 5.
Come on.
It was not. But I think I was writing plays at the time. So I was working at a theater, and they were having a short play festival. And I decided to write a short play to submit to this festival and see if it would be performed. And it was. They accepted it. I had a cast, I had a director, I had a set. It was great. Wonderful experience. And the reaction when it was performed was so overwhelmingly positive that I was like, well, I think I could do this. This could be something I really enjoy, and I think I want to go back to it. Because I was always a writer, but it was a matter of like really tapping into the potential and seeing that potential for the future on that.
So it was that play that put you over the top?
Kind of, yeah. That was the impetus, yeah.
So the big question is, how do you, I mean, you're a young person yourself, but how do you advise people even younger than you that if they want to pursue writing, here's how you have to go in what direction?
Yeah, I think kids have to read. You have to read a lot. I think reading is absolutely important too, and necessary, critical to really understand different writing styles, whether it's poetry, whether it's novels, whether it's different style, if it's horror or if it's, you know, comedies, if it's, you know, graphic novels. I don't know, but people can read anything, and it's just about being inspired to write whatever you'd like, and finding what speaks to you, and then writing whatever really speaks to you.
So I used to do a book club here. If you read extra books, you would get to come in and have lunch with the mayor.
Oh.
And we did it up until COVID.
Okay.
And then COVID kind of put an end to a lot of it.
Right.
So during COVID, if I could tell you one thing that I did, is every Thursday night, I would read a story on Zoom to the young kids in Elizabeth.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, and then Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama did it. And I was like, that was my idea. So and then I got some people that are critical. Doesn't the mayor have enough other things to do? But it was kind of fun. I would sit there in front of my office in a screen, and my staff here would film me reading a book, a children's book.
That's fun, though.
Yeah, it was interesting. I got a lot of good things. We don't do it anymore, naturally. Nobody's sitting home listening. But during COVID, when you were stuck indoors, I love to read. I'm always encouraging people to read. So I was so glad to hear you say that tell young people to read.
Yes.
So we're filming this in the middle of Hispanic Heritage Month. And Paloma's Song for Puerto Rico clearly makes an impact during Hispanic Heritage Month. And your history of what you told me about getting in touch with your heritage. What do you do in Hispanic Heritage Month? Do you read more about it, or, you know?
Yeah, I think it's about celebrating and supporting Latinx creators. So whether it's songwriters, whether it's other authors, reading other authors who are of Latinx heritage, whatever that may be, because we're all different. But I've been reading a lot of other authors this month so far, and just really exploring what other stories there are to tell, supporting other artists, supporting dancers, actors, whatever it may be, and just really supporting what creativity we have, and the plethora of creativity we have, just to share that and really celebrate it.
So what's next for you? I mean, do you...
well, I have a couple books.
You said that.
Process.
Would you write a play again?
Probably. I think I might. Yeah.
But you don't have a subject yet.
I don't have a subject yet, but maybe a screenplay. I have that kind of in the back of my head somewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
That would take a lot of room on your
takes
computer,
a lot.
right?
It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. Yeah.
So, do you have any inspiration? Does your husband help? Do your parents? Where do you get your inspiration on doing stuff like this?
I think I get a lot from childhood. Honestly.
You do.
I think I do.
Can we talk about the swing story?
Sure. So I wrote a book called Swing Set. It's a young adult novel.
I read that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I do get a lot of inspiration from my childhood, and that specific story was a coming of age novel about a young girl after she graduates from college, and she's like, what do I do with my life? I have no idea where I go from here. And
she gets on her old swing set.
She gets on her old swing set and just kind of just ruminates and tries to think about it. She's a child at heart.
So when I read that book, I had a swing set in my yard when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, wow, look at this story.
Yeah.
Bailey Avenue swing set.
Yeah, the Bailey Avenue swing set was the inspiration for that swing set specifically in the story.
So I guess you really never know where your inspiration is going to come from, is what you're telling me too?
It comes from anywhere, but for me, a lot of childhood memories. Like even in this book, I got a lot of inspiration from my grandfather's farm in Aguadilla. So he had a farm and we had chickens and goats, and I named every single goat there was. Like, I knew every single one of them, and I just loved being on that farm. It was a great experience for me, and so that was a big part of understanding Paloma's point of view, like living on the farm. I didn't live on the farm, but I stayed on the farm quite a bit when I was a kid, and so it was like I understood the different chores she has to do. I understood some of what she sees, and that was a big part of the book, making sure that the audience, like the reading audience, can see what she sees at every point in the book, because they're not there, but it's her diary. So it's like, how do I impart that, like, she's seeing these things in 1898. It's like, how do we make that relatable to kids today in 2023? It's just making sure that makes sense for them.
Adriana, I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us on the show.
Absolutely.
It's always good to have people from Elizabeth share their successes, and you've done that. So
thank you.
And you're going to have many more, and I really want to thank you. I'm going to enjoy the book. I've enjoyed your last one, and I hope to see a screenplay someday.
Sounds good. I'll definitely let you know when the next one's coming out.
Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you.
For Miss Adriana Rivera, I'm Mayor Chris Bollwage, and we'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.